Republicans trash Afghanistan embarrassment in closed-door briefing today. The article by Sarah Ferris, Olivia Beavers, and Heather Calgay. Today, in Washington, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy exploded in anger over President Joe Biden's handling of the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan during a private briefing with senior administration officials on Sunday, calling it an embarrassment that will reverberate for decades. The California Republican accused the Biden administration of lacking a clear plan as U.S. forces departed the country after nearly 20 years, at one point comparing the situation to Vietnam. In the latest display of GOP outrage over U.S. attempts to end its longest-running war. Now, I'm going to just say this right now. I'm going to take a pause here. This is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassment. For over 20 years, since 2001, the Afghan forces have been getting trained, billions of dollars being pumped into their country, into their resources. And in a matter of weeks, they fell prey to the Taliban. I just don't understand. How does that happen? How does that happen? Please, somebody get me the memo. How does that happen? That's an embarrassment. That is the embarrassment. It is just like Vietnam, when South Vietnam fell to North Vietnam in 1973 after the U.S. left. I mean, really, come on. How could they give up so easily? How can they not defend their country? It's perplexing. In fact, it reminds me of an embarrassment situation during the War of 1812. I think the general was William Hall, and it was the Battle of Detroit. He had a whole army against the British, and here's what happened. The U.S. outnumbered the British, but the U.S. didn't know that, and it got scared, and this general basically just gave up, and they were easily taken over by a small British army with no shots fired because the U.S. was so scared. Now, I'm thinking that was an embarrassment. Now, I'm looking at this. This is also an embarrassment. All right, let me go back to this article. I have passion and I have anger. I want to know where President Ashraf Ghani is. Basically, I probably butchered his name, the president of Afghanistan, who McCarthy said, according to two people listening to the call. McCarthy, who was largely quiet about former President Donald Trump's efforts to broker a peace deal with the Taliban during his presidency, then warned about potential risks here in the U.S. We have to look to our own border. Are we secure at home over the coming weeks? The outburst from McCarthy came on a nearly hour-long call from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, and Chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff Mark Milley. The briefing, which was unclassified, yes, it was unclassified. That means information was exchanged freely and no one didn't have to worry of it being classified, took place just moments after officials confirmed that the Afghan president fled the country. Are you serious? The Afghan president fled the country. That lets you know that stuff is about to pop off over there. Lawmakers' first chance to hear directly from White House officials since Taliban began recapturing key Afghan areas. As the call was going on, the Afghan government was on the brink of full collapse, with the Taliban in the process of seizing Kabul, the country's capital, and U.S. officials preparing to shutter its embassy there. Might as well, because you don't think the Taliban is going to let you, hold that embassy down. It's not going to happen. In response to the GOP criticisms, Austin pointed to the weak resolve of the Afghan military to fight off the terrorist group, remarking that they can't buy will and can't purchase leadership, according to people on the call. These remarks, however, angered Republicans listening to a call like Representative Mike Waltz, Republican, Florida, who served in Afghanistan, who saw the administration blaming their policy failures on Afghans who fought and died alongside U.S. forces throughout the course of the war. Let's be honest. They're pointing fingers. You know, I'm so surprised that they're giving up. The Secretary of Defense really pointed out their flaws. How could they have no will? What did he say? No will or no courage or leadership? It's like you really can't buy those. You gotta have those. You gotta be like that. And honestly, they were those Afghan soldiers weren't really like that. You know, granted, the ones who died alongside, who's risking their lives to defend their country, but a lot of them just wobbled away. It was just like, where are you guys? Why are you not defending the country? We need you to defend the country. Okay. Let me see. I'm gonna get lost here. Okay. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who began her remarks by thanking Biden for his clarity of purpose, raised additional questions about the treatment of Afghanistan women and how the U.S. was working with non-governmental organizations that remained in the country, according to sources on the call. Blinken said he could not give answers on the unclassified call, but would follow up on a secure line, a response that further incensed Republicans. One other House GOP lawmaker spoke up on the call. Representative Paul M., Republican, Michigan, and Army veteran. Ms. M. pressed officials whether there is enough fuel for all the flights evacuating U.S. officials, citizens, and allies from the uncoaching Taliban advance. Basically, he's saying, like, are we going to have enough to get these people out? Because it's not looking good down there. Sunday's briefing for House members, which was followed by an identical briefing for senators, is only the first chance for lawmakers to press the Pentagon for answers about the deteriorating situation on the ground in Afghanistan. Lawmakers are also scheduled to receive a classified briefing when the House returns the week of August 23rd. Still, several GOP lawmakers, including McCarthy, have complained they received almost no information about the strategy, and they didn't have time to ask questions on the call. Early Sunday, Representative Liv Cheney, who we all know her during the Trump impeachment trials, pummeled the Biden administration's handling of the Taliban's rapid-fire military triumph in Afghanistan as unexcusable. Cheney, for whom the war in Afghanistan is part of her family's political legacy, basically her father was vice president, really directed the U.S. forces down there, said the U.S. had failed the people of Afghanistan and that its recent actions would make the nation's allies doubt whether they can trust the United States. I'm on her side on this one. I think I'm going to be on her side. I think it really is going to look bad on the U.S. And can we really trust the U.S. to maintain its commitment all the way through the end? It's not just that the people predicted this would happen. Everyone was warned that this would happen. We have now created a situation where as we get to the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we are surrendering Afghanistan to the terrorist organization that housed Al-Qaeda when they plotted and planned the attacks against us, Cheney said on ABC's This Week. Yes, basically. It's all, with it 20 years they took over Afghanistan back, it would have been all for nothing. Crazy. One day earlier, Cheney blamed both Biden and Trump for the current crisis in Afghanistan. The Trump-Biden calamity unfolding in Afghanistan began with the Trump administration negotiating with terrorists and pretending they were partners for peace, and is ending with America's surrender as Biden abandons the country to our terrorist enemies. It's sad. I low-key agree with her. It is really sad. We could get better. I think it should have been handled a lot better. It needs to be done better. I think the U.S. needs to be down there to push those terrorists, Taliban people back, all the way back, and maintain some sovereignty, some groundage, so that way they wouldn't touch those other countries that the U.S. and the Afghan soldiers worked so hard to defend. You know, it's been 20 years, and I think this was been going on way too long, and then it just needs to be fixed, definitely, because it's just not looking good at all. Let's see. So please, thank you for listening to this podcast. article read, and this analysis on the Afghan war. This is the first episode of The Embarrassment. It is certainly an embarrassment of the handling of this Afghanistan situation. Let's see if it improves down the line. There's 5,000 U.S. troops in Afghanistan right now evacuating U.S. citizens and allies and whatnot. That's down there, so let's see what happens. Thank you and good night from BK Jmac TV.